Okay, so I'm gonna speak, just it's a random idea that I had. I'm gonna speak about a film that I feel is a extremely well made film. It's a well directed film, it's a well enacted film, all the actors, and it's a film that has been a sensation for over the years, for over around 2 decades now. It's a film that many people see as an inspiration for the youth, uh, for the modern day 21st century youth. And I don't mind, like, or rather, I do mind, that's why I'm talking here. But the point is, the reason I'm talking about, firstly, for all the fans who are here reading the caption, they already know which film this is. Okay, so I would want to say to those fans, it's just a perspective that just you could calmly listen. The fact that I'm talking, I want to make a video about this, or I want to talk about this film, is because I think it's a film that has had an impact on our generation. I've seen people really like hugely impacted, and I don't know careeristically, because I remember there's another film that was also around the same time that came out. Lakshya is that another film, the Farhan Akhtar movie that inspired a lot of people to join the army. I don't know if this film also inspired people. There are two ways that they can take inspiration from. I'll talk about that later. Okay, I'll reveal the film now. The film that I'm talking about is Rang De Basanti, of course. And the reason why I'm talking about Rang De Basanti, because I think that there are so many points in the film that where it's Amir Khan's character and the whole arc that he has, his character's arc, Sharman Joshi's character arc, uh, the white girl's character arc, Sohali Khan, Maddie who dies in the film, Wahida Rahman's cameo in that film, extended cameo in the film, the music of A.R. Rahman, the choreography of the songs, the way the songs are shot, the way the film is shot, the way the film is edited, all of it has an everlasting effect on our senses. Like, that I just can't deny. Now, I'm not getting to the fact that whether this film glorifies, the story of the film, like, I don't have to talk about that. Uh, I don't have the problem with glorification, I have the problem with perspective. I'm okay with wrong people do wrong things and they're glorified for those things. I don't have a problem with that. Because sometimes you take that kind of liberty as a filmmaker. Sometimes it's genre, like for example Quentin Tarantino's work. He always does that because it's genre, it's work of genre, it's not real life. It is a little lifelike, maybe. It's a silly idea. Where am I going with this? Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. The difference between genre and real life is this: that genre, it doesn't matter what you do. If you sell it like a work of genre, you sell it like a film. It's how Tarantino sells it. This is how Bollywood sells it when they make a romantic film, or they make a film like Om Shanti Om, for example. Now, Om Shanti Om is a completely different. It's a tribute. It's almost a satire. But let's say a film like maybe Veer Zara. I wouldn't count DDLJ in it because I think it's a mix and match of everything. But a film like Veer Zara, or a film like or what else is there? The typical Bollywood films, Kal Ho Na Ho could also be one of them. It it is a Bollywood film and it has its own genre logic, the Bollywood genre logic, the romantic, feel good, Yash G invented logic. So there it's okay. Like, you don't have, that doesn't have to be realistic. Similarly, Rang De Basanti is a very specific film that hits on reality. It tries to speak about the reality. It tries to speak about angst that the youngsters have against the system. And back then it was okay to have that. And I don't remember if the existing government back then uh, like tried to stop the release of that film. I don't remember. If there is, it could be. I don't recollect that happening. But my point is that Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra is selling us a propaganda in a good way. I'm trying to say that what does propaganda means? It is something that has a very direct connection to life, and it's a propaganda that is there where it starts from a very, it's not a destructive propaganda. It is a propaganda that wishes to inspire the youth. Like that's the propaganda in it, and it doesn't use filminess in it. It uses the artistic aspects of cinema, music, visuals, the use of cinematography, all of that. Uses characterization, the art of storytelling, all of that. But the final goal is to deliver a message and to deliver it as effectively as it can. And it does deliver the message very effectively. But my only concern with Rang De Basanti is that, like, there is this famous dialogue which again I love the poetry of that dialogue, which Amir Khan says, like, जिंदगी जीने के दो तरीके होते हैं, जो होता है होने दो, बर्दाश्त करो, या फिर जिम्मेदारी उठाओ उसे बदलने की. Now when he says जिम्मेदारी उठाओ उसे बदलने की, what does it really mean? Does it really mean what really happened in the film? Like, Madhavan is their friend. They are very deeply connected. Generally, that was a group. The whole first act or the first second act of the film, it dwells on the fact that how close these people are. This bunch of people, they could die for each other. We get that sense when it happens in the end. So it makes perfect cinematic sense that they could. Okay, it makes perfect cinematic sense. I'll just decrease the speed of this so that I can talk longer. Maybe. Okay. So it makes perfect cinematic sense because these are the characters who could kill for each other. They wouldn't think about the consequences, and that's what they do in the film. The only problem is that they look at it, and the filmmaker looks at it as जिम्मेदारी उठाओ उसे बदलने की. Assassinating a politician, they murdered Anupam Kher. They murdered someone else as well. I don't recollect that, but they made political assassinations, right? And then they went to a radio show, a radio center, to propagate why they did what they did, and they tried to inspire, which is a direct way of saying that this is what the youth should do. When I say this is what they should do, it means they should become responsible. They should question their system. This is like the underwritten, like this is what is there. Like, it's not the obvious thing that of course Rakesh Mehra is not telling you to kill people, but the problem is that the film is so well made and it works on its reality so well that it feels like that. It's not a Ghatak. It's not a film like Ghatak, which again one of my favorite films, but Ghatak is a filmy film. So when Sunny Deol hits those 10 men or whatever, 7 brothers, सातों को साथ मारूंगा, एक साथ मारूंगा, it just is cinematic, what you call it, it's a cinematic high. It's a genre high. It's what Bollywood is supposed to do. The angry young man has a new form. It's not like Amitabh Bachchan, he's really brutal. Sunny Deol's angry young man. But that is what it can work for a film of that kind. When a film like Rang De Basanti tells you something very convincingly, and since it's made so well, you are convinced by it. You feel that this is what the film is trying to say. Well, in reality, I don't think any changes should have happened to that screenplay, or whatever happens in the film should have happened exactly the way it happens. It's a perfect film, that like series of events wise, but the perspective should be like these were the young men who got emotional because one of their friend died, and what they did was self-destructive, and they needed a voice of conscience in that. Any of those characters, it could have been Atul Kulkarni even, because it sets up Atul Kulkarni as an antagonist, as a religious fanatic, but then he changes. But maybe he can be utilized in a way that he is this voice of conscience, because he's not a youngster and he's seen life and he's made many changes in his own life now. So maybe he can see the situation from a vantage point and realize that what we are doing is just stupidity. It doesn't mean anything. Nothing is going to change if we do that, right? There are so many films made. There's this one beautiful film that is inspired from a Hollywood film, but I would only say inspired. It's not a copied film. The film is Dombivli Fast. And for a long time, I think many people wanted to remake that film with Madhavan in it. Interestingly, so that Dombivli Fast is that one film which realizes that whatever the character is doing is he's fallen off the ladder. He's lost his mind. Whatever he's doing, he's not doing it from a voice of conscience. And we understand that the system is responsible for him falling from the ladder, like losing his sanity. And that's exactly what the perspective should be either that should be the perspective, or the other perspective, these guys are misguided, and whatever happens, it's a tragedy that whatever they did is a tragedy. What happens to them after what they did is not a tragedy. It's the obvious thing that it will happen. They will be killed. Of course, when you're doing it realism, that's why that's why the point is, it all works. It all works in Rang De Basanti. It's a beautifully kind of not realistic, but it's a film that, as I said, it's a well-made propaganda film in a good way. But the perspective is the problem. They've been glorified. They've been equated with Bhagat Singh throughout, which again it was fun. But again, that the end perspective should have been that we are really not Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh lived in an independent. It was a ruled state. Here, this is a system that we all have contributed to. You're all part of this system. When you're living in a democracy, you're all part of the system. You cannot just discard the system and expect that you are the heroes. You're not the heroes. You're misguided heroes. Maybe your intentions were good, but you're misguided people. And people can feel pity about you. There's nothing wrong when people do feel pity about them, but they don't feel pity for what has happened. They feel pity because they all will be killed, and they're all young people and very positively motivated people, and someone who have been awakened because early they were just lazy people bumming around. And then Madhavan, the guy who was the voice of conscience. Okay, this is the interesting part. He was the voice of conscience in that film. Would Madhavan agree of what happened after his death? That to me is a question to every fan who's watching this video. Would Madhavan approve of what happened? Of how his friends got revenge from the system, or from the individual, whatever it is. Would Madhavan approve of that? I don't think the film ever tries to put that question. Even if the film tried to put that question, I think I wouldn't have made this video. I would have rather made a video about how Rang De Basanti is a brilliant film, which it is. Like, in parts it is. Filmmaking wise, it is a great film, as I said earlier. But this is the perspective that I want to talk about. There are many films which are kind of debated in this way. I think there's this one film which I'm on the other side of. Like, many people argue about how Life is Beautiful, the Italian film that won a lot of Oscars, and the actor, director, Chaplinesque, Roberto Benigni won Best Actor, and I think Best Foreign Filmmaker for Best Foreign Films. He won the Director's Award as well. Many people have this argument that it takes the Holocaust very lightly, but the difference is that it never takes it lightly. Like, there is this one half of the film, the first half of the film, which I also don't like. It uses like a setup to get to the Holocaust, but once it gets to the Holocaust, it never takes it lightly. It just doesn't show you the kind of violence that happens there. It tries to interest you, tries to confuse you, tries to bind you in that young boy's world. But it never, like, it gives those little hints about the horror of the Holocaust so beautifully, so perfectly. I love that film. But people also always argue about that. So I'm on the other side, and that's the same kind of argument I'm making about Rang De Basanti. But as I said, the reason why I'm making this argument is because it's a well-made film. Because it's a film that is going to be taken seriously. I'm taking that film seriously. If it's a silly film that everyone just comes around and kills and nothing works, I would never be arguing about this. I would never be making a video about it. I would never have anything to say about it. So the fact that good cinema always kind of, whether you like it, how much you like it, what you don't like it, but it always engages you in a conversation. A film that doesn't make you want to talk is a film that doesn't matter. It could be, you could have had good time 2 hours, don't want to talk about it. Like, most of the genre films could be like that. There's nothing wrong with that because films. Like, but then collectively they're part of a system. Like, genre is a work of collection. Like, a genre film is never to be seen alone. It has a history of that genre, and when you understand that history and where it's going and where it's coming, the references in that sense, then you understand the beauty of genre. So nothing wrong with genre, but there are certain films which are not doing anything. They're not part of the tradition of genre, and yet that they have entertained you for some time, but you've forgotten them and you don't want to talk about them. Those are the films that I would say are the worst films, not the actual worst films that we always hate or we always want to talk about, and how we hated them or how they're so bad. When we have that conversation, then they're not really the bad films then. So as I said again, Rang De Basanti, I don't think it's a bad film. It's a great film that I think should have been made with a different perspective. Yeah, so that's it for today. I would have also loved to talk about the other films that this director made, Bhag Milka Bhag, but I'm cut shorting the video. It's being a little long. Fine. So see you again.